Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. It's a new year, a new you, and it's really time to help discover your true, beautiful self. And that's what the ladies from Simply Bliss Med Spa and Wellness are here to talk about. They want you to better yourself inside, outside, all around. Isn't that true, girls? Well, thank you for coming back here to talk more about your amazing spa. And again, it's simplyblissmedspa.com. Tell us a little bit about what it is you do, the overall, and then we'll go down and kind of recap a little last week talking about hormones. There's still much more to talk about as well.
Sure. So, we're a full service med spa. Not only do we do injectables, but we do what we like to call lifestyle medicine, which is hormone, weight loss. We do some lasers,
peptides, thyroid management. Kind of the whole encompassing of the lifestyle that makes you feel good from the inside out.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, the lasers, the outside you're working in, but you're also doing the inside working out, which is kind of where we left off last week because we were talking about diet, lifestyle, hormones. And I know this is important because it really affects, right? The diet and exercise, stress management, all with hormone health. And this is something you can do. Could you just introduce yourself and tell us, your credentials and why you could do this stuff? Because I know you're an expert.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Missy Ritonya, and I'm the nurse practitioner at Simply Bliss Med Spa. And I am certified as a nurse practitioner in family medicine, but I also have certification in hormones. My specialty is functional medicine. And so, again, we look at wellness from the inside out, looking for root cause of why problems are happening. And hormones are a central part of that. Part of that, we were talking about hormones last week, leading back into lifestyle changes, how diet and exercise and all of that can impact hormonal health. So we'll dig right into that today.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about thyroid, Hashimoto, a lot of that, and just even the gluten factor and inflammation.
Yeah, so we can kind of dig into starting with thyroid health. Thyroid health, 90% of people who come in with low thyroid functioning is going to be related to an autoimmune component of hypothyroidism. And usually only 10% of it has to do with just your thyroid isn't functioning for whatever, an unknown reason.
Okay.
And so a lot of times when we say Hashimoto's, people don't know what Hashimoto's is.
I don't. I've heard it. So yeah, please, even for me, could you tell us?
It's the autoimmune related component of thyroid, hypothyroidism. And so Hashimoto's basically is when your immune system becomes overactive for one reason or another. Something triggers it to start responding. And your body basically makes antibodies that then go and start to attack your thyroid. Oh. And over time, because of that inflammation, leads to a hypothyroidism or inflammation within your thyroid. Or with Hashimoto's, you can have times where because of the inflammation of your thyroid, you have too much thyroid hormone, and then you have too little thyroid hormone. And sometimes you can have just normal thyroid hormone levels, but most of it stems back to what is the reason this is happening. And as Amy kind of touched on that a little bit, is gluten is typically the thing that leads to the inflammation. So gluten is a protein that's found in our foods. A lot of times you find it in breads, pastas, but they also put it in a lot of dressings. It's a lot of fillers in a lot of baked goods, desserts, barley, wheat, that kind of stuff. And as our body breaks it down, we can't say that we have an allergy to it, but it creates an immune response within our body. And as that gluten gets broken down, it mimics the thyroid itself. And so it produces antibodies against the thyroid. And so then your body then goes in and starts attacking your thyroid. And that creates whole body inflammation, but also causes a whole line of symptoms that happen. And so, like I said, you can swing anywhere from having hyperthyroid to hypothyroid to regular thyroid. And so that's one of the big things that we check when people come in and they start to say they have symptoms. So symptoms meaning irritability, fatigue, brain fog, joint aches and pains can be another one. Constipation, dry skin, dry nails. They're like, my hair is falling out. I don't know why. Cold intolerance. There's so many different symptoms. And so that's where you really want to dig into hormonal testing and making sure that you check more than just a TSH level, but you're looking at all of the thyroid hormones, including thyroid antibodies, to try to determine what the cause is. And a lot of times, conventional medicine or conventional doctors, if you have those symptoms, they're only going to look at a TSH level. Well, that's not going to tell you truly what's happening at the cellular level.
So TSH is more kind of like a screening, and it's what it's doing is telling us what the body's producing, thyroid stimulating hormone. So how much is the body trying to stimulate the hormone?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a screening, and there's a pretty wide range with that. So most doctors, if you're within the range, they're just going to be like, yeah, you're okay. And they don't dig any deep. Mm-hmm. So then the next test that people need to and want to pretty much demand that they get is their free T3, free T4. And I'll let Missy into those two tests.
Yeah.
And for those that don't even know, or you're doing this in-house, so someone can come in to get their hormones tested. Just want to repeat that because I know we didn't establish that off the top today, but yes, they're full service. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And so it's just extra tests that we, once you draw the blood, then you just have those added on. But the free T3 and the free T4, what make them important is when your body produces thyroid hormone, you actually have thyroid hormones 1 through 4. One, they're not really sure how active it does and how much it does in your body, but it does something. We wouldn't have it. 2, they're finding out that there's a lot more to the T2 than what we originally thought. T3 is actually the most active form of your thyroid hormone, and that's the one that's going into the cells and giving it energy. And so it's the most metabolic one of them all. And then T4 is really how we store our thyroid hormone. So what we're looking at is we want to look at the free levels to make sure what's available and what's unattached. And so you look at the free T4, and that will tell us, okay, well, how are we storing this? So we store it and it has to get broken down into the free T3. And then the free T3 is what goes into the cells and actually gives them energy. And so we look specifically at each one of those. The most important of all 3 of those thyroids, so between the TSH, the free T3, and the free T4, the free T3 is actually the most important despite what we test, or what we test even in medicine, because that's going to tell us all the way down to the cellular level how much of that thyroid hormone is getting in there and doing the job. And so that's kind of what, going in and the testing and what we do to make sure, is your thyroid, if you are on thyroid medication, are you truly getting the type of thyroid medication that matters? And what is it doing inside the cells? Which would make sense with a lot of times people will come in and say they still have symptoms despite being on medication. And it's because their body may be storing it just fine, but there's trouble converting it and getting it into the cell at the cellular level. So of course, you're still going to have symptoms of hypothyroidism.
So let's talk a little bit about synthetic thyroid medication and then desiccated or
Yeah. So there's different types of thyroid hormone.
Just hit me. Hold on. The one time they tried to put me on armor or something.
Armor thyroid.
Correct.
Yes.
Was
Or
this?
nature.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
NP thyroid.
Okay.
So the
Yep.
difference is, generally speaking, when you go through guidelines, so medical doctors manage disease through guidelines, and the guidelines kind of guide us and tell us if you have a certain disease, this is how the best way to treat the disease is. And according to the guidelines, you always typically start with a synthroid or levothyroxine to treat hypothyroidism. And what synthroid or levothyroxine is it's just a T3 or a T4 medication. And so the idea behind it is your body will naturally convert your T4 into a T3 on its own when it feels like it needs it. But what we have found through various testing and through patient experience is that's not always true for everyone. So 50% of people do just fine on synthroid or levothyroxine with the T4, but 50% of those people don't because they have trouble with that conversion process. So they're not converting their T4 into T3. And so their stores of T4 can look great on paper, but if you're not converting it over to getting that active form, then you're still going to have symptoms. And so that's where when people come in and they're on a levothyroxine or a synthroid and they're still having symptoms, you probably need to convert them over to, like you were saying, like an Armour thyroid, an NP thyroid, because you're getting both the T3 and the T4. So T3 is short acting, and typically when your body needs it, it can break it down and you get that quick acting T3. And so that's kind of like the theory behind it is, as your body needs the T4, it's going to break it down into the T3, but not everybody's bodies do that. So by giving them a T3 and a T4, it gives your body what it needs immediately. So it's available right away to help with some of those symptoms, as well as still keeping those stores in your body. So, when you need it, it can break it down and convert it over time.
Wow. I love this conversation. Everybody's body. There's still so much more to talk about, and we have plenty of time. Let me just remind everyone, though, how we can reach out to you, if you don't mind. Share the website again, any contact information before we continue.
Yeah. So we have a contact at simplyblissmedspa.com. That is, more, we use that for questions, those kind of things. And then we also have info at simplyblissmedspa.com. And then our website is pretty thorough. We do try to keep that up to date, as far as that goes. And then we also do telemedicine. So if someone is just wanting to have a conversation with Missy, then they can call and book a phone consultation as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So want to continue then with the thyroid. I mean, there's still so many other hormones. We're going to also address some myths and misconceptions as well. But I know you guys weren't done with that conversation. So let's go. Let's continue.
Yeah. Well, we can actually move on. And go
and just curious, is it true? I was reading earlier when we first started talking, though, about the thyroid itself, that sleep really helps or inhibits issues with the thyroid. Is that true? Sleep deprivation can.
Yes. So absolutely. Sleep deprivation can actually affect all hormones, progesterone, testosterone, estradiol, as well as thyroid function. And so, making sure that you're getting high quality sleep is essential for every single hormone within your body. Typically, we want to make sure that you're aiming for 7 to 9 hours of good sleep. When I say good quality sleep, that REM sleep is very important. And what a lot of people don't know is we make growth hormone in our pituitary gland.
Okay.
And when we're younger, in our, teenage to early 20 years, that's when our growth hormone is the highest. For every decade of life that we go through, that hormone level starts to drop and we don't get as much. We get 6 bursts of growth hormone throughout the day. But as we age, it's kind of like your gas tank is full we don't get as much gas in our tank. So even though we're getting those 6 bursts throughout the day, it's not to the extent that it was when we were younger in our teens and 20s. We replenish our growth hormone when we get good quality sleep. And growth hormone, what a lot of people don't know, is the only time that your body produces growth hormone is between the hours of midnight and 2 a.m. So if you're not in a deep REM sleep between the hours of midnight and 2 p.m., you're bypassing your body's ability to make and store that growth hormone throughout the day. So that's where it's important when we say good quality sleep and sleeping in those hours. So unfortunately, people who work night shifts, their growth hormone patterns and cortisol levels are disrupted because they're not getting the rest that they need, even though they do get 7 to 10 hours of sleep, but they're bypassing the hours that your body is supposed to naturally rest and restore. So yeah, that's a great question of, why is sleep so important? Because that's our body's way of repairing itself for all the things that we do throughout the day, so that way it can get ready for the next day and make our hormones and body basically function back to the way that it's supposed to.
Thank goodness. I spent 20 something years getting up at 2 in the morning for work, and I don't miss those days. And I feel like I'm finally catching up on my sleep. And now I know the good things are happening. All right, good.
Absolutely. That's a lot of people, unfortunately, especially when you have shift workers or, our first responders who have to work crazy hours. I mean, it takes a big toll on people.
You work with a lot of first responders, and so, and married to.
Yeah, married to
wow.
first responder. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. You know that whole world very well.
And they're normal, a lot of stress in that,
High cortisol.
So cortisol is another thing that's kind of a big, kind of a buzzy word out there, and people just are like not quite sure what the whole cortisol thing is. And so maybe you want to talk about that just a little bit, or where you
hit on cortisol.
Your highest level of cortisol in a normal person should be when you wake up, right?
So how cortisol works is when you're sleeping, your cortisol levels are at the lowest, and your first response in the morning, when you get sunlight or when your body first wakes up in the morning, this is where they say you should have sunlight first thing in the morning to help your body kind of wake up, because that triggers that cortisol response. So when you wake up, it's going to be low, but within 30 minutes, it should immediately start to increase and continue to increase until about noon. At noon is when your cortisol levels should be the highest, and then they slowly start to decrease throughout the day. And slowly by 9 o'clock, again, they're going to be at their lowest level. And that's again to kind of prepare your body for that rest and relaxation to recover for the day. And so they call it the catabolic stage, which is recovery. For people who have shift work, or people when we say have adrenal fatigue, we don't see that normal kind of circadian rhythm or spike in cortisol levels that are healthy, because of long-term stress, irregular sleep patterns, lifestyle, environmental things. And so if you were to look at a cortisol stress level and you were to have them, and we do that through a saliva test, you will see that, with some people, first thing in the morning, they may spike, but then it drops immediately. Or they have what we call a flatline response where it never spikes. And those are the people where they just are so fatigued, they can't get out of bed, there's no motivation. And that's because cortisol is what gives us kind of that get up and go energy throughout the day. And so we watch that a lot. And, our first responders, it's hard for them because they get that constant fight or flight, because if they have to go to an emergency, that's where cortisol is most important. And so they get this big fight or flight release of cortisol, which gets them through. And then they're supposed to be able to after they finish whatever it is, calm back down. As a police officer, he works on the SWAT team, and sometimes they get back-to-back calls where they don't get that time in between to decompress. It's just that constant, gotta go. And so they start to get some of that adrenal fatigue. And I have a lot of protocols and things that we do to help them turn that off so we can get that response back to a healthy level for them to help them deal with all of that.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So, I know, I just knew that's kind of a thing out there that people talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. So we can.
Oh, let's talk about the myths.
Yeah, there's there's some good ones
addressing
on there.
myths and misconceptions.
I've had heard I've heard that hormone therapy can cause cancer. I've heard that one. That can't be true. Why would people be doing it? I mean, come on.
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit, because we have a lot of people that see us and then they go to their doctors and their doctors to death and say you to have this great, beautiful life. And, I mean, just recently, a patient of mine that I've had for 15 years, Missy's been seeing her now for a year. Her doctor scared her to death about being on bioidentical hormones.
Yeah. So there is, hormone therapy. The important part of it is looking at your past medical history and looking at family history and, making sure that you're diving into all aspects of that, because a lot of people do believe that hormone therapy can lead to cancers, significant, and especially estrogen therapy. And where that comes from is there was a 2003 study called the Women's Health Initiative that did show that by taking estrogen,
not estradiol.
Yeah, it did increase the chance of breast cancers, but also cardiovascular things like heart attack and stroke, blood clots, in women over the age of 65. So they ended the study early because they were starting to see a lot of those changes in these women. But they also had a lot of positive things that came out of the study, as they had seen that's all that people remember about hormone replacement. And as Amy pointed out, it was looking at synthetic hormones. So they were looking at estrogen, which is not estradiol. Okay. They're looking at Premarin specifically, which comes from horse mare urine. And so they're taking out 17 different types of estrogens and putting them into a pill. And so it is not bioidentical to our bodies. It's what our body's like. And so even when you look at that, it can cause cancers, it can cause inflammation, it can cause blood clots. And so they tell you to be on that medication for the shortest amount of time at the lowest dose possible. When we do hormone replacement here, we are not doing synthetic hormones. We're doing bioidentical. And the difference is bioidenticals are made from yams, which when you break it down to the molecular level is very close to the hormone. When we do hormone replacement, we're doing exactly that. We're replacing the hormones that were lost during that perimenopause or menopausal phase and just giving you back enough of what your body is lacking. And when you do it like that, and there is virtually no risks, but only benefits that come with that. Wow. And so the biggest thing is just educating your patient on the risks of hormone replacement. Cancer, it depends on the person. It depends on what type of hormones that they're taking. It depends. Yeah, family history. The combined estrogen, progesterone therapies that you see in birth control, those have been, but estrogen therapy alone in certain populations also has shown that there's no risk. And so what we do know is estradiol, testosterone, and progesterone, as we age, it helps us prevent, for women, cardiovascular disease. Once we start losing estrogen as we age, it actually causes stiffening within our arteries, which then puts us at that increased risk for heart disease, stroke, blood clots, those kinds of things. Whereas if you start doing hormone replacement, it's protective there. We also know that estrogen therapy, estradiol therapy specifically, is protective cognitive things like Alzheimer's and dementias as we age. And testosterone is amazing because it's going to protect our lean muscle mass. And so the one thing that we notice, you think about older people, you think about how frail they are, and they start to lose, they call it sarcopenia, they start to lose that muscle mass. Whereas if you just gave them a little bit of testosterone, that will help them to that. And so, it just helps you live a longer life that you just feel better.
Optimal. Yes.
And you're going through menopause, you're supposed to feel like, and that's not true.
No. And I've been in through menopause. Menopause out there is at least a full year without
a menstrual cycle.
Without a menstrual cycle. Wow. I also am at cardiac for some other, like a gene mutation that I have, and so, and because it is cardioprotective. But what I've found with that, and a lot of people will, you hear women say, "Oh, estrogen makes me fat," or makes me have all this.
Yeah,
I will tell you, if you step up your estrogen slowly. I've never had a flatter belly in my life than I do now, and I really struggled with that my whole life. And so, it's not an overnight matter, and balancing your hormones when you're first getting in that game of that, you can plan on a year at least of figuring that out by doing blood tests and seeing how you're feeling and being very regular with your medication. And I think that's enough too, that hormones, if you're being replaced with hormones, you need to take them every day.
Yeah.
And so I think, a lot of people struggle with it, or they're just like, no, this isn't working. And it does really take a while to get that figured out. And we'll think that I'm on a great dose. She'll run my labs and it's like, we need to bump you up. Oh my God,
Well, thank you guys again for being here. And I apologize for some of that disconnection. I'm not sure if you had it on your end, but it was a little difficult breaking up. But I let you finish what you were saying. So I hope you heard me okay. But we are unfortunately out of time. Can you do me a favor and just remind us how we can reach out to you?
Absolutely. You can reach us at simplyblissmedspa.com. We're on Instagram and Facebook. You can also reach us at, our phone number is 402-502-9868. And
then contact at simplyblissmedspa.com and info at simplyblissmedspa.com.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure seeing the two of you. Thanks so much for all the insight. It's making me realize I need to get out there, and I wish I lived closer, but I have to find someone near me that's dealing with this and does all this to help, because I'm 46. Change is starting to happen soon. I know my body's not feeling right in certain aspects, so it'd be a great thing, I think, for anyone to get checked. And men too, right? Not just women.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid of it, because hormones can be amazing and make you feel better. And I think that's the biggest thing is go in and talk about it. If you have a family history, you'll dig into it and they're going to treat you the best for you. It's not a one size fits all. And there's always something that you can do. You don't have to feel terrible.
Thank you, Missy.
And one last thing is, find a hormone specialist. Find someone who specializes in hormones, because there's so much more new information out now than
ever before.
Especially what our mom.
Thank you again, ladies. Have a great day.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Adopt US Kids presents Multiple Choice Parenting.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes?
How could he do this to you? And for Sheila, she has split ends.
B, console her?
Oh, sweetie, this is going to happen a lot. 4, maybe 5 more times before you get married.
C, take charge?
Gotta get this all straightened out. Give a little talking to, man to man, mano a mano. Hey, Steve! Is now a good time? No? Okay, no problem. Bye.
Or D, help her find a new boyfriend?
I know a great place to meet boys. The internet. Nice, single boys. Never mind. How about some ice cream?
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.